The null swarm came through the shadow gate like death itself taking physical form. Captain So-Young watched from the bridge of the defiant dawn as reality began to unravel around the ancient portal. These were not ships in any sense that mortal minds could understand. They were absences in the fabric of existence, holes where the universe simply stopped. "Captain," Lieutenant Wu Jin reported, his voice tight with fear, "our sensors cannot get readings on them. They register as nothing. Literally nothing." Around the shadow gate, the combined fleet of humans, coalition aliens, and reformed void bringers held defensive positions. 3,000 ships from dozens of races, armed with weapons that combined the best technology of every civilization in the galaxy. It would not be enough. Admiral J-1 coordinated the defense from his flagship, the Earth's Vengeance. Beside him on the bridge stood the Devourer of Suns, the ancient Voidbringer commander who had agreed to this desperate alliance. The creature's dark form flickered with nervous energy. "How many are coming?" J-1 asked. "All of them," the Devourer replied grimly. "The null swarm does not invade, it consumes. Every entity, every possibility, every potential reality that could have been." Through the shadow gate, more of the impossible creatures emerged. They had no fixed shape, constantly shifting between forms that hurt to look at directly. Some resembled storms of living mathematics. Others looked like geometric impossibilities that folded space around themselves. "All ships," J-1 broadcast to the combined fleet, "engage at maximum range. Do not let them get close to populated systems." The first volley of fire from 3,000 ships lit up the darkness like a newborn star. Plasma cannons, particle beams, quantum torpedoes, and exotic Voidbringer energy weapons all struck the leading null swarm entities. The weapons passed through them as if they were not there. "Direct hits confirmed," reported Weapons Officer Yunji from her station. "But no damage detected. The weapons are not interacting with the targets." The Devourer made a sound like dying galaxies. "They exist outside normal space-time. Physical weapons cannot touch them until they choose to manifest, fully in our reality. Then how do we fight them?" So-Young asked over the communication link. "We make them angry enough to become solid. Then we hit them with everything we have." The null swarm entities began to spread out from the shadow gate, moving toward the combined fleet with terrible purpose. As they approached, reality itself started to break down. Stars flickered and went out. Empty space developed cracks that showed glimpses of other dimensions. On Earth, President Hae-Jin watched the battle from the secret command center. Around her, the planet's leaders sat in stunned silence as they witnessed the end of everything they had ever known approaching at the speed of light. "Madam President," General Hyan-Woo reported, "we are receiving evacuation requests from every inhabited world in the galaxy. Billions of people trying to flee." "Where can they go?" she asked quietly. "Nowhere. If we lose this battle, the null swarm will consume the entire galaxy within days." Dr. Mi-Young looked up from her instruments. "Madam President, I am detecting massive energy buildups throughout our solar system. The backup fleets are activating." President Hae-Jin nodded. Hidden bases on Mars, in the asteroid belt, and in the outer planets were powering up. Thousands of additional ships that had been held in reserve were preparing for launch. If the first line of defense failed, Earth would throw everything it had into one final battle. At the shadow gate, the null swarm entities began to manifest more solidly in normal space. As they did, their true horror became visible. These creatures were not just alien. They were wrong on a fundamental level. They violated the basic rules of physics simply by existing. The largest entity, something the size of a moon that might have been their leader, spoke in a voice that came from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Reality ends now." Captain Dong-Wook, commanding a mixed squadron of human and Voidbringer ships, felt his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. "All ships focus fire on the large one. Maybe we can—" His words were cut off as the entity reached out with something that might have been a limb. The space around Dong-Wook's destroyer simply stopped existing. The ship, its crew, and even the possibility that they had ever existed, vanished from the universe. "Dong-Wook is gone," Admiral Jae-Won announced grimly. Not destroyed, erased, as if he never was. Across the fleet, captains who had served with Dong-wook for decades found that they could not remember his name or face. Only the ship's logs proved he had ever existed, and even those were slowly fading. The Null swarm pressed forward, erasing ships and their crews from reality itself. The combined fleet fired desperately, but most of their weapons had no effect. Only the specialized Void-bringer energy weapons seemed able to hurt the entities, and there were too few of those. "We are losing," the Devourer announced. "Just as we lost 3,000 years ago. Then we try something new," Admiral Jaewon replied. He opened a fleet-wide communication channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Jaewon. Prepare for quantum resonance cascade." Captain So-young felt her heart skip a beat. The quantum resonance cascade was theoretical, untested, and probably suicidal. It would merge every ship in the fleet into a single multi-dimensional entity for a few minutes. The power would be enormous, but the strain might destroy them all. "Admiral," she called, "that could kill everyone in the fleet." "Captain, everything we do from now on could kill everyone in the galaxy." Across 3,000 ships, quantum resonance chambers began to charge. Human technology, refined over 70 years of preparation, reached out to connect with alien systems in ways that should have been impossible. The effect was beyond anything anyone had imagined. Every ship in the combined fleet began to exist, in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They became ghostly and solid at the same time, real and unreal, present and absent. The sensation was like being everywhere and nowhere at once. But the power was incredible. So-young felt the defiant dawn merge with hundreds of other vessels. She could feel the thoughts of their captains, the dedication of their crews, the desperate hope of entire civilizations. For a moment, she was not just human but part of something greater. The merged fleet entity fired everything it had at the Null swarm. Weapons that existed in 17 dimensions struck creatures that lived outside normal space-time. For the first time since the battle began, the entities showed damage. The largest Null swarm creature screamed in frequencies that shattered reality. Parts of its impossible form began to dissolve back into the void between dimensions. "It's working," Jaewon shouted. "All ships maintain the cascade, keep firing." But the strain was enormous. Human and alien crews throughout the fleet began to collapse as their minds struggled to process existing in multiple realities. Some ships flickered out of phase entirely, lost between dimensions. On the coalition world of New Harmony, Governor Chen-Lu watched the sky as stars began to disappear. The Null swarm's influence was spreading beyond the battlefield, threatening the entire galaxy. "Sir," his aide reported, "we are receiving a message from Earth. They are asking all worlds to focus their thoughts on the battle. Some kind of psychic support for the fleet." Chen-Lu did not understand how thinking could help a space battle, but he was willing to try anything. Across his world, 2 million people turned their minds toward the distant fight, adding their hopes and dreams to the quantum resonance cascade. Similar scenes played out on thousands of worlds. Vastery warriors meditated on victory. Krell drones buzzed in perfect harmony. Luminary beings of pure energy focused their essence on supporting the fleet. The psychic energy of an entire galaxy flowed into the quantum cascade, giving the merged fleet entity power beyond imagination. Captain So-young, existing in 17 dimensions at once, aimed the combined firepower of 3,000 ships at the heart of the Null swarm. The weapons that fired were not just plasma and energy, but the hopes and dreams of every living being in the galaxy. The blast struck the largest Null swarm entity and erased it from existence so completely that reality sealed up the hole where it had been. The other entities, seeing their leader destroyed, began to retreat back through the Shadow Gate. But as they fled, they left a final message that chilled every soul in the fleet. "We will return with more." The quantum cascade collapsed, and the fleet returned to normal space-time. Half the ships were badly damaged, a quarter were completely destroyed, but they had won. Admiral Jaewon looked around his bridge, where exhausted officers were slowly regaining consciousness. "Status," Report, he ordered wearily. The Shadow Gate is sealed, Colonel Sang-wook reported. The Voidbringers say it will hold for maybe a century before the Null Swarm can break through again. A century to prepare, Jae-won mused. We will need every day of it. On Nexus Prime, Chancellor Vrex stood before the Coalition Council with a very different attitude than he had shown a week ago. The proud reptilian warrior looked humbled and grateful. The humans have saved us all, he announced. Their hidden fleet, their advanced technology, and their courage have given us time to prepare for the next attack. Ambassador Kyung-ho, still, wearing his Earth Admiral uniform, stood to address the council. The war is not over, the Null Swarm will return, but next time we will be ready. Victory at the Shadow Gate was only the beginning. Captain Dong-wook stood on the bridge of his destroyer as it docked with a massive Voidbringer ship that had been crippled but not destroyed in the battle. His boarding team was ready, armed, with weapons designed specifically for fighting inside enemy vessels. Remember, he told his soldiers, we need prisoners and information. Try to take some of them alive. The airlock opened with a hiss and Dong-wook led 20 Marines into the dark corridors of the enemy ship. Their helmet lights cut through the blackness, revealing walls that seemed to absorb photons. The ship felt wrong, like walking inside a nightmare. Sir, Sergeant Minho whispered. The air in here is breathable, but it feels hungry. Dong-wook knew what he meant. The ship itself seemed alive somehow, feeding on the energy of everything inside it. They needed to work fast before the vessel drained their equipment batteries. They found the first Voidbringer in what looked like a control room. Dong-wook expected to see some kind of alien creature, but what he found was much worse. The Voidbringer had once been humanoid, but its flesh was translucent and filled with shifting darkness. Its eyes were black holes that seemed to lead nowhere. When it saw the humans, it spoke in a voice like dying stars. You should not exist. Dong-wook raised his weapon, but the creature held up one skeletal hand. Wait, we need to talk. 2 hours later, Dong-wook was back on his ship sending an urgent message to Admiral Jae-won. What he had learned changed everything. Admiral Jae-won received the report while his fleet was regrouping near the Shadow Gate. The captured Voidbringer had revealed something that made his blood run cold. All senior officers, report to my ready room immediately, he ordered. Within minutes, his cabin was filled with the captains and commanders who led humanity's secret fleet. Captain So-young was there via communication link from the Defiant Dawn. Everyone could see the worry on the Admiral's face. The Voidbringers are not invaders, Jae-won began without introduction. They are refugees. The room fell silent. Captain So-young leaned forward on her screen. What do you mean, Admiral? According to the prisoner, the Voidbringers were driven from their home dimension by something called the Null Swarm. Entities that consume entire realities, not just star systems. The Voidbringers came to our galaxy 3,000 years ago because they were running for their lives. General Hyun-woo, who had arrived from Earth an hour ago, frowned. That does not excuse what they did to the ancient civilizations. No, it does not, Jae-won agreed. But it explains why they are so desperate. They have been trapped in the Shadow Gate dimension for 3 millennia, slowly starving. Now they have broken free, and they are hungry enough to consume anything, Captain I. So-young studied the tactical displays. Admiral, if they were running from something worse, what happens when that something finds our galaxy? Jae-won activated a holographic projection that showed the Shadow Gate. The prisoner says the Null Swarm follows dimensional traces. Every time the Voidbringers open a portal to a new reality, they leave a trail. The Null Swarm can follow that trail. How long do we have? Asked Commander Yujin. Unknown. Could be days, could be years, but they are coming. The room erupted in concerned voices. Fighting the Voidbringers was hard enough. Fighting something that scared the Voidbringers seemed impossible. There is more, Jae-won continued, and everyone fell silent again. The Voidbringers have weapons and technology specifically designed to fight the Null Swarm. If we can combine their knowledge with our engineering capabilities, you want to make peace with them, So-young said quietly. I want to save our galaxy. On the bridge of the Defiant Dawn, Captain So-young ended the communication and stared out at the stars. Around her ship, the human fleet maintained defensive positions near the Shadow Gate. In the distance, she could see the wreckage of dozens of Voidbringer vessels. "Captain," Lieutenant Wu Jin approached carefully. "What are your orders?" So Young thought about the billions of people living in the galaxy. Humans on Earth who had never seen an alien. Fastari warriors who thought they were the strongest race in the universe. Krell drones who worked together like parts of a single mind. All of them were about to face something beyond their worst nightmares. "Signal Admiral J1, she said, finally. "Tell him Captain So Young volunteers to make first contact with the surviving Voidbringer fleet." "Ma'am, that could be suicide." "Lieutenant, everything we do from now on could be suicide." 3 light hours away, the largest surviving Voidbringer fleet was regrouping near a dead star system. Their commander, an ancient being called the Devourer of Suns, floated in the dark bridge of his flagship. Around him, his crew worked to repair battle damage and tend to their wounded. The Devourer had fought in the original war 3,000 years ago. He had seen his people's home dimension consumed by the Null Swarm. He had watched entire realities collapse into nothingness. The memory of that horror drove everything he did. "Commander," one of his officers reported, "we are detecting a single ship approaching. Unknown design, but similar energy patterns to the vessels that defeated our advance force." The Devourer studied the approaching ship on his displays. It was smaller than his flagship, but radiated power that made even his ancient sensors struggle to get clear readings. "They destroyed half our fleet," he said in his voice like grinding stones. "Why would they send only one ship?" "Perhaps it is a trick, Commander. Or perhaps they wish to talk." The Defiant Dawn approached the Voidbringer fleet alone, its weapons powered down but shields at maximum. On the bridge, Captain So Young felt the weight of the entire galaxy on her shoulders. If this went wrong, the war would continue and everyone would die when the Null Swarm arrived. "Captain," Wu Jin reported nervously, "they are scanning us. Very advanced sensors, but they are not locking weapons. Open a communication channel." The main screen flickered, and suddenly So Young was looking at something that had haunted her nightmares since childhood. The Devourer of Suns was massive, his body a shifting mixture of darkness and dying starlight. His eyes were holes in reality that seemed to go on forever. "Human," the creature said, "you have great courage to come here alone." "I have great need," So Young replied calmly. "We need to talk about the Null Swarm." The ancient being's form shifted with what might have been surprise. "You know of the swarm?" "We know they are coming. We know you have been running from them for thousands of years. We know that fighting each other will only make it easier for them to destroy us all." The Devourer was silent for a long moment. Around him, his crew watched the human ship with mixtures of fear and curiosity. Finally, he spoke again. "You defeated our advanced fleets. Your technology rivals our own, but you cannot imagine what approaches. The Null Swarm does not just destroy matter and energy. It erases the possibility that matter and energy ever existed. Then we fight together," So Young said simply. "Together?" The concept seemed to confuse the ancient creature. Humans and Voidbringers fighting side by side? Why not? You have weapons designed to hurt them. We have industrial capacity to build those weapons in vast numbers. You have knowledge of their tactics. We have proven we can adapt and innovate." The Devourer studied the human captain through the communication link. In 3,000 years of war and exile, no one had ever offered to help his people. Everyone had tried to destroy them or run away. "What do you want in return?" he asked suspiciously. "An end to attacks on civilian populations. No more consuming inhabited worlds. If we fight together, we protect everyone together." "And if I refuse?" So Young's expression hardened. "Then we destroy your fleet like we destroyed the others, and we face the Null Swarm alone. Your choice." The Devourer laughed, a sound like planets cracking. "You truly are a warrior species. Very well, human. We will try this cooperation. But when the swarm arrives and your people see what true horror looks like, do not blame us for what we had to become to survive." "When the swarm arrives," So Young replied, "they will learn what happens when you threaten Earth." Across the galaxy, the news of the Alliance sent shockwaves through every civilization. On Nexus Prime, Chancellor Vrex stormed around the council, chamber in rage. "Alliance with the Voidbringers?" he roared. "The humans have lost their minds." Ambassador Kyung-ho, still wearing his Earth Admiral uniform, remained calm. "Chancellor, with respect, you do not understand what is coming. The Null Swarm makes the Voidbringers look like children playing with toys. Elder Tae-hyun had spent the last day studying every piece of ancient data he could find. His findings were terrifying. "The humans may be right," he said quietly. "I have found references to the Null Swarm in our oldest archives. They are described as the hunger that devours possibilities and the ending of all stories. We cannot trust them," Chancellor Vrex insisted. "Chancellor," Kyung-ho said patiently, "you do not have to trust the Voidbringers. You just have to trust us. And we promise you this. When the real enemy arrives, humanity will stand between them and every innocent life in this galaxy." In the depths of space, the Shadow Gate pulsed with new energy. Something vast and hungry was stirring in the dark dimension beyond. The Null Swarm had found the trail, and they were coming. But this time, they would not find a divided galaxy of... The first rule of war is to know your enemy. The second rule is to make sure your enemy does not know you. Captain So-young watched from the bridge of the Defiant Dawn as the massive Shadow Gate came into view. Around the ancient portal, hundreds of Voidbringer ships floated like dark clouds against the stars. They were beautiful in a terrible way, their black hulls seeming to drink the light from nearby stars. "Captain," Lieutenant Wu Jin reported quietly, "we are now in weapons range. All human ships are holding position and maintaining stealth." So-young studied the enemy formation. The Voidbringers had arranged themselves in a perfect sphere around the Shadow Gate. Their largest ships, massive dreadnoughts over 10 kilometers, long held the center. Smaller vessels patrolled the edges like hungry sharks. "Have they detected us?" she asked. "No, ma'am. Our stealth systems are holding perfectly. As far as they know, this sector is empty." So-young smiled coldly. The Voidbringers were about to learn that empty space could be very dangerous. 3 light hours away, the Coalition Defense Fleet was running for their lives. Admiral Vrex Ka, the military commander of all Coalition forces, had ordered a full retreat to the core worlds. His flagship, the Pride of Vestara, was leading a convoy of over 2,000 ships away from the Outer Rim. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving distress calls from the outer colonies. The enemy fleets are beginning their attacks." Admiral Vrexka was a proud warrior who had won 100 battles, but he had studied the ancient records. He knew what the Voidbringers could do. "We cannot help them. Order all ships to increase speed. We need to reach the defensive line at Kepler Station." Behind them, 3 separate Voidbringer fleets were spreading across the galaxy like a plague. Each fleet had hundreds of ships. Each ship carried weapons that could erase matter from existence. On the colony world of New Harmony, Governor Chen Lu watched the sky with growing fear. His world had 2 million people and no military defenses. The colonists were farmers and miners, not soldiers. "Governor," his aide reported, "our sensors show a Voidbringer fleet will arrive in 4 hours. We have maybe 50 civilian ships that can carry people off-world." Chen Lu did the math. 50 ships, maybe 5,000 people per ship. They could save 25,000 people. That left 1,975,000 to die. "Start with the children," he ordered. "Get as many children off this world as possible." Similar scenes were playing out across 100 worlds. Families saying goodbye forever. Parents putting their children on ships, knowing they would never see them again. Civilians preparing to die to buy time for others to escape. The galaxy was learning what terror really meant. But in the empty space near the Shadow Gate, Captain So-young was about to change everything. "Signal Admiral J1, she ordered. "Tell him we are in position and ready to begin Operation Daybreak." On his command ship, Admiral J1 received the message. He stood on his bridge, surrounded by officers who had waited their entire lives for this moment. Through the ship's windows he could see nothing but stars and darkness. The human fleet was completely invisible. "All ships," he broadcast, This is Admiral J1. Today we end 70 years of hiding. Today we show the galaxy what humanity can do. Begin Operation Daybreak. Decloak and engage. Across a sphere of space 50 light minutes wide, 300 human ships suddenly appeared. One moment the space was empty. The next moment it was filled with the most advanced warships ever built. The Voidbringers reacted instantly. Their dark ships began to move, forming attack formations with fluid grace. Weapons that had destroyed civilizations began to charge, with deadly energy, but the humans fired first. The Defiant Dawn's main gun lit up the darkness with a beam of pure energy. The particle stream moved at 99% of light speed and struck the nearest Voidbringer dreadnought dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the enemy ship exploded in a burst of white fire that could be seen from 3-star systems away. Target destroyed, reported Weapons Officer Yunji with satisfaction. Their armor is tough, but not tough enough. All around the Shadow Gate, human ships opened fire. Plasma cannons sent streams of superheated matter into enemy hulls. Missile launchers fired projectiles that moved faster than thought. Energy weapons carved through the darkness like burning swords. The Voidbringers had expected to face primitive aliens with simple weapons. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that matched their technology and surpassed their tactics. "Captain," Wu Jin reported with excitement, "enemy return fire incoming." The Voidbringer response was terrifying. Dark energy beams that could erase matter struck human shields with tremendous force. Some of the smaller human ships took damage. A few were destroyed completely, their crews dying in brilliant flashes of light. But for every human ship lost, 3 Voidbringer vessels exploded. Captain Dongwook commanded the destroyer Swift Justice in the thick of the fighting. His ship danced between enemy fire, using superior speed and maneuverability to stay alive. Around him, the greatest space battle in galactic history raged with deadly fury. "Chief Engineer Yu Jin," he called, "give me everything the engines have." "Already giving you 110%, Captain. Any more and we might blow the reactors." "Then give me 115%. We need to reach that enemy carrier before it launches more fighters." The Swift Justice accelerated to impossible speeds, racing past explosions and energy beams. Dongwook could see his target, a massive Voidbringer ship that was launching swarms of small attack craft. "Missile lock acquired," reported his weapons officer. "Fire everything." 20 missiles streaked toward the enemy carrier. Each one was tipped with a warhead that could crack a moon. The Voidbringer ship tried to shoot them down, but the missiles were too fast and too smart. The carrier vanished in a ball of nuclear fire. Admiral J1 watched the battle from his command ship and felt pride swell in his chest. His people were fighting like heroes. Human tactics, developed through decades of study and simulation, were proving superior to ancient alien strategies. "Admiral," Colonel Sangwook reported, "we are detecting massive energy readings from the Shadow Gate. Something big is coming through." On the tactical display, J1 could see new contacts emerging from the portal. These ships were different from the others, larger, more heavily armed, ancient and terrible beyond imagination. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "Phase 2 begins. Now, activate the quantum resonance systems." Throughout the human fleet, captains received the order they had trained for their entire careers. One by one, the human ships began to shimmer and fade, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Voidbringers had never seen anything like it. Human ships that had been solid and real suddenly became ghost-like, passing through enemy fire without taking damage. But the human weapons still worked perfectly, striking from angles that should have been impossible. Captain So Young felt the Defiant Dawn shift between realities. The sensation was strange, like being in 2 places at once. Around her, the bridge, crew worked with calm precision, even as space itself seemed to bend around them. "Target the largest enemy ship," she ordered. "Let us give them something to really worry about." The biggest Voidbringer ship was 15 kilometers long and bristled with enough weapons to destroy planets. It had emerged from the Shadow Gate like a moving mountain of darkness. Ancient beyond measure, it had probably fought in the original war 3,000 years ago. The Defiant Dawn fired every weapon it had. Plasma cannons, particle beams, quantum torpedoes, and antimatter missiles all struck the enemy dreadnought at the same moment. The explosion was visible from the other side of the galaxy. When the light faded, the ancient ship was gone. Across Coalition space, military leaders watched the battle with growing amazement. On Nexus Prime, Chancellor Vrex stared at the tactical displays with his mouth hanging open. "What ships are those?" he demanded. "Where did they come from?" Elder Tae-hyun checked his databases frantically. "I do not recognize the design. They appear to be using technology more advanced than anything in our records. Could they be another ancient race? Something that has been sleeping like the Voidbringers?" Before Tae-hyun could answer, a communication channel opened. Ambassador Kyung-ho appeared on the main screen, but he looked very different from the nervous little man who had sat quietly in council meetings. Gone was the humble expression and uncertain manner. Kyung-ho now wore the uniform of an Earth admiral, and his eyes burned with quiet confidence. "Greetings, Chancellor," he said calmly. "I believe it is time for a proper introduction. I am Admiral Kyung-ho of the Earth Defense Force. We are here to save your galaxy." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Aliens shouted questions and accusations in a dozen different languages. Chancellor Vrex slammed his claws on the table for silence. "Impossible," he growled. "Humans do not have ships. Like that, humans are primitive," Kyung-ho smiled. "Chancellor, humans have been studying your technology for 70 years. We have been preparing for this war while you thought you were living in peace. Did you really think we would stay weak forever?" On the tactical display, the battle near the Shadow Gate was turning into a complete victory for the mysterious human fleet. Voidbringer ships were exploding by the dozens. The first Voidbringer ship came through the Shadow Gate like a nightmare made real. Commander Hansol watched from his monitoring station as something blacker than space itself pushed through the purple energy of the gate. The ship was enormous, bigger than any vessel he had ever seen. "Subin, are you getting readings on that thing?" Hansol asked, trying to keep the fear out of his voice. Subin's hands shook as she worked her controls. "Commander, our sensors can barely detect it. The ship seems to absorb all energy that hits it. I cannot get a clear size reading, but it is at least 5 kilometers long." More ships began to emerge. Each one was a different shape, but all shared the same terrifying darkness. They looked like holes cut out of reality itself. No lights, no windows, no obvious weapons, just pure hungry blackness. "Send another emergency signal," Hansol ordered. "Tell all coalition forces that the Voidbringers are coming through. Estimate at least 50 ships so far." But even as Subin sent the message, more ships kept coming, hundreds of them. They formed up in perfect formations around the Shadow Gate like they were preparing for war. 3 light hours away, Captain Minsu of the Coalition Defense Fleet received the warning. His ships were the first line of defense, a mixed force of Fastory battleships, Krell carriers, and Mullery destroyers. They had been ordered to observe and report, not to fight. "All ships maintain distance," Minsu ordered. "We are not here to engage. We are here to gather information." The Voidbringer fleet began to move. They came straight toward the monitoring station, their dark ships sliding through space without any visible means of propulsion. No engine flames, no energy signatures. They moved like living shadows. "Commander Hansol," Subin called out. "They are heading right for us." Hansol closed his eyes for a moment. He had always known this assignment might be a death sentence. "Send one final message to the Coalition. Tell them the enemy moves without engines and appears to be targeting our station first." The lead Voidbringer ship was now close enough to see clearly. Hansol stared at it through the station's main window and felt his mind struggling to understand what he was looking at. The ship seemed to bend light around itself. Looking at it was like trying to focus on a hole in his vision. "Subin, get to the escape pods," he ordered. "What about you, Commander? Someone needs to keep recording data until the last possible moment. Go." Subin ran for the escape pod bay. Hansol stayed at his post, typing notes about the enemy ships. Future generations would need this information, if any future generations survived. The Voidbringer ship fired its first weapon. Han Sol never saw the actual blast. One moment the monitoring station was intact. The next moment it was dissolving into nothingness. The weapon did not explode or burn. It simply erased everything it touched from existence. Han Sol had time for one last thought before he vanished, along with his station. The Coalition had no idea what it was facing. On Earth, President Hai Jin watched the final transmission from the monitoring station. The command center deep under the planet's surface was filled with Earth's military leaders. Everyone was silent as they processed what they had just seen. "How many ships came through?" asked General Hyunwoo. Dr. Mi Young, the head scientist, checked her instruments. "At least 800, possibly more. They are moving toward Coalition space at significant speed." Colonel Do-yeon, the head of intelligence, spoke up. "Our spy satellites are tracking 3 separate enemy fleets. One is heading for the outer colonies. Another is moving toward the main shipping lanes. The third appears to be heading directly for Nexus Prime." President Hyejin turned to Admiral Jae-won, who had arrived from the moon base an hour ago. "Admiral, are our ships in position?" Jae-won nodded grimly. "The main fleet is 12 hours from the Shadow Gate. Captain So-young reports all ships are ready for combat. We also have smaller task forces positioned along the enemy's likely routes. And the Coalition forces?" "Running away as fast as they can," Jae-won replied with disgust. "Chancellor Vrex has ordered a full retreat to the core worlds. They are abandoning the entire outer rim without a fight." Dr. Mi Young brought up a tactical display. Red dots showed the Voidbringer fleet spreading out across the galaxy. Blue dots showed Coalition forces pulling back toward the center. There was a huge empty space between them. "This is where we make our stand," President Hyejin said, pointing to the empty space. "Right here, where no one expects us." In space, Captain Minsu watched his long-range sensors with growing horror. The Voidbringer fleets were moving faster than anything should be able to move. They would reach the outer colonies in less than a day. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving evacuation requests from 17 different worlds. They want us to help transport civilians." Minsu felt sick. His small fleet could maybe evacuate 1 world, not 17. "Tell them to use whatever civilian ships they have. We cannot help everyone." The cruel mathematics of war were simple. The Coalition had billions of people living in the outer rim. They had maybe a few million ship berths available for evacuation. Most people would be left behind to face the void, bringers alone. "Captain," his sensor officer called out urgently, "I am detecting something strange. There are ships moving through this sector, but I cannot get clear readings on them." Minsu frowned. "What kind of ships?" "Unknown, sir. They appear to be using some kind of stealth technology, very advanced. I can only detect them when they pass in front of stars." Minsu studied his displays. Faint shadows moved between the stars, heading toward the Shadow Gate. "How many ships?" "I estimate at least 200, possibly more. They are maintaining radio silence." A chill ran down Minsu's spine. Were these more Voidbringer ships? Some kind of advance force? "Track them as best you can. If they change course toward any populated systems, we need to warn those worlds." But the mystery ships did not change course. They continued straight toward the Shadow Gate, moving with purpose and determination. On the defiant dawn, Captain So-young studied the tactical situation. Her ship was leading the human fleet toward their first real battle. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. Everyone knew what was at stake. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Wu Jin from the sensor station, "we are detecting Coalition ships in this sector. Looks like a small defense fleet. Are they scanning us? Their sensors are touching our hulls, but our stealth systems are holding. They cannot get a clear reading." So-young smiled. Human stealth technology was 50 years ahead of anything the Coalition had. It had to be, because humanity had been planning for this war, while the aliens thought they were living in peace. "Maintain course and speed," she ordered. "We do not want to give away our position until we reach the Shadow Gate." In the engineering section of the Defiant Dawn, Chief Engineer Dong-wook monitored the ship's systems. The engines were running at 90% power. pushing the massive vessel through space at incredible speed. But the engines were not the ship's most impressive feature. That honor belonged to the weapons. The Defiant Dawn carried plasma cannons that could melt asteroids. It had missile systems that fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Its main gun was a particle beam weapon that could punch through the armor of any known ship. But even those weapons were not humanity's greatest advantage. That was something else entirely. "Chief," one of his technicians called out, "the quantum resonance chambers are fully charged." Dongwook nodded. The quantum resonance system was humanity's most closely guarded secret. It was based on technology recovered from a crashed alien ship 70 years ago. But human scientists had improved it far beyond its original design. The system could do something that no alien race had ever achieved. It could make human ships temporarily exist in multiple dimensions at once. For a few minutes, the Defiant Dawn could be in normal space and hyperspace simultaneously. The tactical advantages were enormous. On his flagship, Admiral Jae-won reviewed the final battle plans. The human fleet was divided into 3 groups. So-young's group would attack the Voidbringer ships near the Shadow Gate. 2 other groups would intercept the enemy fleets heading for populated worlds. "Admiral," Colonel Sang-wook reported, "we are receiving updates from our spies in Coalition space. The aliens are in complete panic. Some worlds are surrendering without a fight, hoping the Voidbringers will spare them." Jae-won shook his head sadly. "They do not understand what they are facing. The Voidbringers do not take prisoners, they consume everything." "What about Ambassador Kyung-ho?" "Still playing his part perfectly. The Coalition Council thinks he is hiding somewhere in the inner systems with the rest of Earth's refugees." Jae-won pulled up a communication channel that connected him to every human ship in the fleet. 300 captains looked back at him from their bridges. Men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment. "My friends," Jae-won began, "in a few hours, we will face humanity's greatest test. The enemy has been sleeping for 3,000 years and they are hungry. They think this galaxy belongs to them. They are wrong." Heads nodded on screens throughout the fleet. These officers had grown up hearing stories about the Voidbringers. They had studied every piece of ancient data about the enemy. They knew exactly what humanity was facing. "The aliens think we—" The Great Council chamber on Nexus Prime had not seen such fear in 1,000 years. Representatives from every major race in the galaxy sat around the massive circular table. The air was thick with worry and the smell of different alien species. Ambassador Kyung-ho sat quietly in the human section. He was a small man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. The other ambassadors barely looked at him. To them, humans were newcomers to the galaxy, young and weak creatures who had only joined the Coalition 50 years ago. Kyung-ho did not mind being ignored. It made his job easier. High Chancellor Vrex of the Vastery stood at the center of the chamber. His red scales gleamed under the lights, and his yellow eyes burned with ancient anger. "The Shadow Gate stirs," he announced in his deep, rumbling voice. "We all know what this means." A wave of fear rippled through the chamber. The Krell representative, a large insect with 4 arms, clicked nervously. The Luminari ambassador, a being of pure blue energy, flickered with worry. "Surely there is nothing to fear," said Ambassador Thek of the Molari people. "The Shadow Gate has been quiet for 3,000 years. Perhaps it is just some natural phenomenon." Elder Tae-hyun of the Coalition Archives stepped forward. He was very old, even for a Vastery, and his scales had turned white with age. Everyone listened when he spoke, because he knew more about galactic history than anyone alive. "I have studied the old records," Tae-hyun said slowly. "The Shadow Gate was built by a race we call the Voidbringers. They came from somewhere beyond our dimension. They consumed entire star systems, turning them into empty darkness." The chamber fell silent. Even the Krell stopped their nervous clicking. "The ancient races fought them for 100 years, Tae-hyun continued. Billions died. Whole civilizations were erased from existence. Finally, the survivors managed to trap the Voidbringers in their own dimension and seal the gate. But the seal was never meant to last forever." Chancellor Vrex's claws scraped against the metal table. "How long do we have?" "Unknown," Tae-hyun replied. but the energy readings suggest days, not weeks. Panic began to spread through the chamber. The Malari ambassador started talking fast about evacuation plans. The Krell representative buzzed with signals to the hive mind. The Luminari flickered between different colors of fear. Ambassador Kyung-ho raised his hand slowly. "Excuse me," he said in his quiet voice. The chamber gradually became silent. Chancellor Vrex looked down at the small human with barely hidden contempt. "Yes, Ambassador. What do the humans wish to contribute to this discussion?" Kyung-ho stood up, looking nervous and out of place among the great powers of the galaxy. "Well, sir, we humans don't know much about galactic history. We're still very new to all this, but maybe we should start evacuating the outer colonies." Several aliens laughed. The Malari ambassador patted Kyung-ho on the shoulder like he was a child. "Don't worry, little human. The grown-ups will handle this." Kyung-ho smiled and sat down. Behind his gentle eyes, his mind was working fast. Everything was going exactly as planned. Chancellor Vrex called for order. "The human makes a good point, though for the wrong reasons. We should evacuate all civilian populations from the outer rim. Military fleets should fall back to defensive positions around the core worlds." "And Earth?" asked the Krell representative. "Earth is in the outer rim," Vrex replied without interest. "The humans should evacuate immediately. Their primitive ships cannot help in this fight." Kyung-ho nodded eagerly. "Of course, Chancellor. We'll start evacuating right away. Earth has some old cargo ships. We can probably get most people out in a few months." "You have days, not months," Taehyun warned. Kyung-ho looked worried. "Oh dear. Well, we'll do our best. Maybe some of us can escape." The other ambassadors turned back to planning the defense of the galaxy. Nobody noticed Kyung-ho quietly activate a small device hidden in his jacket. The device sent a coded signal to a secret relay station, which bounced the message across the galaxy faster than light. The message was simple. "The fools are running scared. Begin Phase 2. On his command ship hidden behind Jupiter's largest moon, Admiral Jae-won received the signal. He smiled as he read it. Kyung-ho was playing his part perfectly. For 50 years, the ambassador had convinced the galaxy that humans were harmless and stupid. Now that act would give humanity the greatest advantage possible. Complete surprise. "Colonel Sang-wook," Jae-won called to his communications officer. The colonel, a woman with short black hair and sharp eyes, looked up from her station. "Yes, Admiral?" "Send the signal to all fleet commanders. Tell them the aliens are evacuating the outer rim. We will have a clear path to the Shadow Gate." Sang-wook's fingers danced over her controls. Across the solar system, hidden human bases received the message. Captains and admirals who had waited their entire lives for this moment began to smile. Captain So-young stood on the bridge of the Defiant Dawn as it raced through space at impossible speeds. Her ship was so fast it could cross a solar system in hours, so fast that even light seemed to crawl by comparison. "Captain," reported Navigator Unji, "we will reach the Shadow Gate in 18 hours. "Excellent," So-young replied. "Signal the other ships. Tell them to maintain stealth mode until we arrive." Behind the Defiant Dawn, 299 other human warships followed in perfect formation. Each ship was invisible to alien sensors. Each carried weapons that could crack planets. Each was crewed by men and women who had trained their entire lives for this war. The human fleet was not just advanced technology. It was human determination, made real. It was the desire to protect Earth and prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. Back on Nexus Prime, the council meeting continued. Chancellor Vrex had divided the galaxy into defense zones. The core worlds would be protected by the combined fleets of all the major races. The outer colonies would be abandoned. "What about the monitoring station near the Shadow Gate?" asked the Luminary ambassador. "Commander Hansel and his crew knew the risks when they took that assignment," Vrex replied coldly. "We will remember their sacrifice." Elder Taehyun looked through ancient data files on his tablet. According to the old records, the Voidbringers prefer to attack isolated targets first. They will probably destroy the monitoring station, then move on to nearby systems. "How many ships did they have in the old wars?" asked the Krell representative. "Thousands," Taehyun replied grimly. "Their technology was beyond anything we understood. They could move through space without using engines. Their weapons could destroy matter at the atomic level. Worst of all, they seemed to feed on the destruction they caused. The chamber fell silent again. Even the proud Vastari looked afraid. Ambassador Kyung-ho cleared his throat. Excuse me again. What did these Voidbringers look like? Tae-hyun brought up an ancient image on the main screen. It showed ships that seemed to be made of solid darkness. They had no lights, no windows, no obvious weapons. They looked like pieces of night sky that had been shaped into warships. They absorbed light, Tae-hyun explained. Our ancestors called them shadow ships. Some survivors claimed the ships were alive, but that was probably just fear-talking. Kyung-ho studied the image carefully. He memorized every detail and sent them to his hidden communicator. Within minutes, Admiral Jae-won would have complete information about humanity's enemy. The good news, Tae-hyun continued, is that they can be destroyed. It just takes enormous amounts of firepower. During the final battle of the last war, it took 50 battleships to destroy a single Voidbringer vessel. Chancellor Vrex did quick math in his head. We have maybe 2,000 ships in total, if they have thousands of vessels. We will fight with what we have, declared the Malari ambassador. Better to die fighting than live as slaves. The other aliens agreed, though fear was clear on every face. Only Ambassador Kyung-ho looked calm. He even seemed to be trying not to smile. Well, Kyung-ho said cheerfully, at least Earth won't be in the way. We'll evacuate to the inner systems where we'll be safe. That is probably for the best, agreed Chancellor Vrex. Your ships would only get in the way of real warships, Kyung-ho nodded. Oh yes, we wouldn't want to cause any trouble. We'll just hide behind the big, strong alien fleets and let you handle the scary monsters. Some of the aliens actually laughed at that. The idea of humans fighting the Voidbringers was too funny to take seriously. The meeting continued for several more hours. Battle plans were made, evacuation routes were chosen, emergency protocols were established. Through it all, Kyung-ho sat quietly and sent regular updates to the human fleet. Finally, the meeting ended. The ambassadors filed out to contact their homeworlds and prepare for war. Chancellor Vrex stopped next to Kyung-ho's chair. Little human, he said, I am sorry your people must face this terror, but perhaps it is better to learn your place in the galaxy now, before you grow too proud. Kyung-ho looked up at the towering reptilian with innocent eyes. Oh, don't worry about us, Chancellor. Humans are very good at learning our place. We've been practicing for a long time. Vrex laughed and walked away. He did not see the cold smile that crossed Kyung-ho's face for just a moment. Outside in space, the human fleet continued its invisible approach to the Shadow Gate. Soon the galaxy would discover that Earth had been learning much more than just its place. The alarm rang through the space station like a dying scream. Commander Hansol jumped from his chair and ran to the control panel. His hands shook as he read the numbers on the screen. This could not be real. Subin, check these readings again, he called to his communications officer. The young woman typed fast on her keyboard, her face growing pale. Commander, the readings are correct. The Shadow Gate is waking up, Subin said in a quiet voice. Hansol felt cold fear in his chest. Every child in the galaxy knew the stories about the Shadow Gate. For 3,000 years it had been silent and dark in the empty space between stars. Now strange energy was coming from it. Colors that had no names danced around the massive stone ring that floated alone in the void. The Shadow Gate was older than any living race. Nobody knew who built it or why. The only thing everyone knew was that bad things came through it long ago. Very bad things. Send a message to all coalition ships, Hansol ordered. Tell them the Shadow Gate is active. Use the emergency codes. Subin's fingers moved over the controls. Within minutes, ships across the galaxy would know. Panic would spread like fire. The great alien races of the coalition had lived in peace for so long, but they all remembered the old stories. Far away from the monitoring station on a hidden moon base near Earth, Admiral Jae-won received the coded message. He was an old man with gray hair and tired eyes. For 70 years he had waited for this day. For 70 years humanity had prepared in secret. Jae-won walked down a long metal corridor deep inside the moon. No alien knew about this place. The Coalition thought humans were young and weak. They thought Earth had only small ships and simple weapons. They were very wrong. The corridor ended at a massive door. Jaewon placed his hand on a scanner. The door opened with a deep rumble. Beyond it was a sight that would make any alien general weep with fear. Hundreds of ships floated in the huge underground hangar. These were not the simple human vessels the Coalition had seen. These ships were long and deadly, covered in armor that gleamed like mirrors. Their weapons could destroy planets. Their shields could stop anything the galaxy could throw at them. Captain So-young stood on the bridge of the biggest ship, the Defiant Dawn. She was young for a captain, but her eyes held the wisdom of someone who had trained for war her whole life. Her crew moved around her like dancers, each person knowing their job perfectly. "Captain, we have received the signal," reported her first officer, a tall man named Wu Jin. "Good," So-young said. "Tell all ships to prepare for launch. After 70 years of hiding, it is time to show the galaxy what humans can really do." The Defiant Dawn was 3 kilometers long and armed with weapons that used technology stolen from crashed alien ships and improved by human scientists. Its engines could push it faster than anything the Coalition had ever seen. Its computers could think and plan better than the smartest alien minds. But the Defiant Dawn was not alone. In hidden bases throughout the solar system, 300 ships just like it waited for orders. Some hid in asteroid belts. Others sat in the dark side of moons. A few even floated in the cold space between planets, invisible to all sensors. Admiral Jaewon activated the communication system. His face appeared on screens throughout the hidden fleet. Thousands of human officers and crew members looked at their admiral and waited. "My friends," Jaewon began, "today we end our long wait. For 70 years we have let the aliens think we are weak and simple. We have smiled and nodded while they treated us like children. But we have been watching. We have been learning. And we have been building." On the monitoring station, Han Sol watched the Shadow Gate with growing fear. The energy around it was getting stronger. The stone ring, which was the size of a small moon, began to glow with dark purple light. Space itself seemed to bend around it. "Commander," Subin called out, "I am getting readings from inside the gate. Something is moving in there." Han Sol looked at the data. His blood turned to ice. "How many ships?" "I cannot tell, sir. The energy is blocking our sensors. But it is big. Very big." 3 star systems away, the reptilian aliens called the Vastari received the news about the Shadow Gate. Their leader, War Master Crix, slammed his clawed fist on his throne. The Vastari were proud warriors who had conquered half the galaxy, but even they feared what might come through the Shadow Gate. The insect-like Krell also got the message. Their hive mind buzzed with worry. The Krell could control billions of drones with their thoughts. But they remembered the old stories too. Some enemies could not be fought with numbers alone. Even the Luminari, who were beings of pure energy and thought themselves above physical concerns, felt afraid. They had lived for thousands of years and had seen many wars. But the Shadow Gate was different. It was older than their oldest memories. On Earth, President Hae-jin sat in a secret meeting room deep under the ground. Around the table sat the most important people in the hidden human military. They all knew this day would come. They had all prepared for it. "How long do we have?" asked General Hyun-woo, the head of Earth's secret space forces. "Our best guess is 3 days before whatever is in there comes out," replied Dr. Mi-young, Earth's top scientist. "The energy patterns are building up slowly, but they will reach critical levels soon." President Hae-jin nodded. "Then we move the fleet into position. Admiral Jaewon, are your ships ready?" On the moon base, Jaewon smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Madam President, we have been ready for 70 years. Our ships are faster, stronger, and smarter than anything the galaxy has seen. Our weapons can punch holes in reality itself. Our crews have trained their entire lives for this war." "And the aliens?" asked the president. "They still think we are harmless. When our ships appear, they will not believe their eyes." Captain So-young listened to the conversation through her ship's communication system. Around her, the bridge crew, prepared for battle. Each person had been chosen from millions of candidates. Each had spent years learning how to fight in space. They were the best humanity had to offer. "Captain," said Lieutenant Doyan from the weapons station, "all systems are ready. We can launch in 10 minutes. "Good," So Young replied. "Signal the fleet. Tell them it is time to leave the shadows." Across the solar system, 300 ships began to move. They left their hiding places like deadly ghosts emerging from the dark. Each ship was a masterpiece of human engineering. Each carried enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. The aliens of the Coalition did not see them. Human stealth technology was years ahead of anything the galaxy knew. The ships moved through space like invisible death, heading for the Shadow Gate. On the monitoring station, Hansol watched the gate with growing terror. The purple light was getting brighter. Cracks appeared in space around the stone ring. Through the cracks, he could see something that hurt his eyes to look at. "Commander," Subin whispered, "something is coming through." Hansol activated the emergency beacon. Every ship in the sector would know to run as fast as they could, but he knew it was probably too late. Whatever was coming through the shadow gate would not be stopped by conventional weapons. Far away, Admiral Jawan received the final signal. The time for hiding was over. Humanity's greatest test was about to begin. "All ships," he broadcast to the hidden fleet. "This is Admiral Jawan. Operation Daybreak is now active. Show them what Earth can do." The Defiant Dawn's engines roared to life, pushing the massive ship forward at incredible speed. Captain So Young stood on her bridge, watching the stars streak past. Soon, the galaxy would learn that humanity was not weak. Soon, they would see Earth's hidden fleet emerge from the shadows. The Shadow Gate pulsed with dark energy, and something ancient and terrible began to wake up.